G'day everyone, I'm the man called Kimosabi, the man with the plan for the land down under, and welcome to my roundup of the 10 best crowdfunded books of 2021. Each year I review dozens of books, some bad, some good, and I like to highlight the 10 best, according to me. Naturally, this is limited to the books published or released in 2021, books that are indie and crowdfunded, and books that I have read. So once again, in no particular order, here are the 10 best crowdfunded indie comics of 2021 according to This Australian. From the creator of The Abductables and one of the OG CG creators, Michael Derrick, Grayscale is not only one of the best comics of 2021, it's one of the best superhero comics of 2021. And if you know anything about me, you know I'm all about that cape shit. This book was an excellent, self-contained, positive character arc with solid themes and met expectations. While the outcome, a happy ending, is hardly surprising, the way the ending was achieved, the journey to the destination, was a pleasant surprise, well handled, entertaining, and was reminiscent of old-school Spider-Man, Daredevil, and other street-level young male heroes. The art is bold and stylized, and the colours and textures make it pop from the page. Derrick has proven he understands themes, plot, and pacing, and uses all three to fantastic effect. Grayscale uses his ability to see the karma of others to fight crime, but there are larger threads, bigger implications for his powers, his past, and his role in the world. Derrick is creating a complex living superhero world, and I'm ready for issue 2 and beyond. This year we've been so spoiled for street-level vigilante superheroics. The first 4 books on this list fit that genre, with twists, supernatural, pulp, monster stories, but they all share that grimy, low-powered feel. Cobalt is an incredible book from writing to art, especially when you consider it's Jake Adams' first book. It's rare for a creator to hit it out of the park their first time, but that's just what he did. Cobalt tells the story of a character coming out of an early superhero retirement. We get to start right in the middle of the story, with a wealth of history hinted at and many plot threads waiting to run into future issues. The character of Cobalt plays it safe. He knows if he's outnumbered he won't get out alive. He ambushes enemies instead of facing them head on. He admits when a skilled enemy pushes him to the limits of his ability. He's a new hero, one that had a big victory early on and then thought he could leave the costume behind. But he can't, because the best stories are the ones based around conflict. There's a great bit where, when posing as a cop, he gets flustered and uses his real name, which leads to the bad guys tracking him down. The protagonist is very likeable, very relatable. You instantly empathise with him and want to see him succeed. Jake Adams has done a great job establishing a new lore, a new hero, and a new world for us to get lost in. The art in this book, provided by Erwin J. Arosa, is outstanding, like nothing else really being published at the moment. It swings between photorealism to fully painted panels. It has incredible fight scenes and great dynamics and flow. You always know what's going on and you want to know what happens next. The mark of a great story. Issue 1 ends on a cliffhanger, with a great little backup story that shows us some of what came before this issue. And issue 2 is currently on a sign-up page. If you're a fan of street-level vigilante superheroes, regular guys who act like heroes because they can't not, fighting against overwhelming odds, Grayscale and Cobalt are books for you to check out. The next book on this list is another street-level vigilante superhero. It's my personal favourite superhero power level and allows for, in my opinion, the best kinds of stories. It's no surprise then that Michael Oden of Elysium Fields fame, a proven creator, was able to team up with Dean James, rising CG star artist, to create something both powerful and resonant in this field. The story of a grieving father reunited with the spirit of his murdered son to combine into a single hero. This tale is one of regret and agency, justice and revenge. Oden channels his own experiences as a father to bring, in my opinion, his best work yet to the scene. Coupled with Dean's fluid, bold and frankly brave layouts and finishes, no one pushes their compositions like Dean James. The guy is a loose cannon who thumbs his nose at safer, lazier artists. The embraces strains of The Crow, Spawn, and other back from the dead revenge supernatural fare, but manages to be its own thing, more uplifting, grounded, visceral and immediate than just about anything else in the mainstream right now. So the 4th book on this list is a street-level vigilante superhero book. Sound familiar? It's actually a book about 4 characters, a fantastic pastiche-type issue where the tales of several heroes are intertwined together, creating something larger and more deep-running than they would on their own. Silhouette, The Masquerade, Crimstone and Wildcard all get time in the spotlight. Each story has a different tone, theme and artist. This is a hefty book weighing in at 68 pages. You get more than your value for money. The Diaz brothers have assembled some excellent talent to create these classically inspired stories, each one riffing on a genre of comics we know and love. Silhouette is the grim undead avenger with a Sin City aesthetic. Crimstone is the Jekyll Hyde imaginary friend character. Hints of the Hulk and the Max. Masquerade is a rhyming mystery man from early in the last century. And Wildcard is a mystic pirate adventurer, a catch-all for all non-cape comics that were the rage before Wortham got involved, a cosmic surfer on the tides of the Diaz brothers multiverse. And threading the whole thing together is the ubiquitous Hobo, the bearer of the lost pages, a storyteller who introduces these larger-than-life characters to us. Essentially 5 stories in one. There aren't many indie books with the scope, the vision, the chutzpah, and the reach that the Lost Pages has. The in-demand for issue 2 is still active, so go check it out. A direct continuation of issue 1, which made my top 10 books of 2020 list, Perfect 10 is a perfect comic. Colourful, heroic, great art, great writing, pretty women, and cool-looking bad guys. In a fairer world, creator Dave Brink and artist Power Rodrigues would be putting this book out once a month, giving the mainstream a run for their money. As it is with the yearly release schedule to date, it highlights the shortcomings of the crowd-funded model. Not that that's the fault of the creative team on this book. Waking with amnesia, the titular character 10 has to fight off a supervillain hit squad while trying to come to terms with her violent past as a government assassin. It's classic storytelling, ripe for redemption arcs, and that great stuff they did with Captain America Winter Soldier, where he's unfamiliar with popular media from the time he was frozen. I want to see some of that where someone quotes something and 10 doesn't know it because her memory continually gets wiped. I said in my last review of this book it was as 90 as it gets, and that's a good thing, but honestly, this book transcends that era, taking the stuff we love and leaving the clunkier stuff behind. It's got the smart modern writing we crave with the great visual design, themes and style of the decade that was, for many people, the real golden age of comics. Dave Brink has spoken often about his desire to just make the kinds of comics he wants to see, and I'm glad this is the kind of comic he wants to see. I'm glad this is the outcome because each issue is a lot of fun and a great blueprint for others to achieve success. The second book from creator Comi Mark, this is a subversive, imaginative and unique title that breaks a whole bunch of barriers. Mark has been called the Andy Kaufman of indie comics. I've said time and time again, no one is doing anything like what Mark is doing in comics. The guy is a visionary. Taking a public domain golden age issue of the classic boomerang-throwing superhero Daredevil, Mark has rewritten all the dialogue to create a brand new piece of media, one that plays on the tropes of the era, modern tropes we are familiar with, as well as some good old Australian racism thrown in for good measure. Like his last comic, Best Korea, which was created from publicly available historical photos and images, Not Daredevil vs. the KKK is replete with era-appropriate ads, in-jokes, subtle and not-so-subtle humorous nods to the pre-CCA era of comics, and for someone who has even a passing understanding of the history of the comic book industry, there is a wealth of references to uncover. Mark is a next-level creator who looks at things in a comprehensive sense. He wastes no panel, no page. Every aspect of this book is a gimmick. Every element is either a setup for a joke or a punchline in itself. In an industry being glutted with new creators and content, many of which are sailing seas navigated by others before them, Mark is an explorer, an always-on showman who innovates with every release, and his next book, The Krishna Kid, is looking like it'll be his best one yet. The first issue of Wahid was so controversial that reviewing it got my first YouTube channel banned. Not warned, not struck, not suspended, but erased from existence. The review is up on BitChute these days. I reviewed it more favourably than not, but it didn't make my top 10 books of 2020 list. Issue 2, however, is a massive level up for the team of Hysham Cain and Frederick Mattson, and has clawed its way, bloody, controversial and heretical, onto the list for 2021. There's two immediate things of note with Wahid 2 Dawn of Evil. One is the huge art level up that it's had. The art in issue 1 had good foundations, but ranged from gets the job done to clunky. In this issue, the epic spanning and mythological content creates a fully painted masterpiece that bursts from the page. Mattson's unusual border and composition choices, something I thought detracted from the previous issues, works so well in this issue, telling a story that rages for thousands of years. The second thing of note is that this issue is a complete departure from the first. It's a several thousand-year-long flashback. The bad guy from the last page of issue 1 is the protagonist in this book, and his story is told to us from the point of his conception to the modern day. While I would have liked to have more of the titular character's adventures, especially after the cliffhanger he was left on last issue, this isn't unheard of. Garth Ennis in particular is fond of these complete 180s from issue to issue. I'm not a big fan of flashbacks, particularly mid-book, but if you're going to do a big flashback, this is the way to do it. Adamu appears to be a self-manifested stand-in for the Judeo-Christian God. Like Ennis's work on Preacher, for this version of God to be correct, you'd have to ignore most of what the Bible says about him. Not a new concept, the idea that the God presented in the Bible isn't as powerful or as loving as portrayed. Adamu conquers Atlantis and the empire of Sargon of Akkad. He exists at the beginning of time, births mankind, and chases our love and worship for the rest of his days. This book is like violent, bloody poetry. It's vast, its ideas are vast, and smack of the kind of epic storytelling the Greeks did so well at the dawn of civilization. Wahid 2 Dawn of Evil is a worthy follow-on to the first issue, beautifully rendered with outrageous violence, action and ideas. It's subversive, it's both stunning and brave. A Muslim creator portraying a Muslim hero fighting, what else? Muslim extremists. While I don't agree with the ideas in this book, I'm glad it's being made, and I'm glad the creative team refuses to kowtow to the Twitterati. The gold standard in crowdfunding success, going from strength to strength, Tim Lim and Mark Pellegrini have built their own empire on the foundations of fun, clean, all-American fun, quality products, timely delivery, respect to the customers, and safe, harmless, soft-core, cheesecake, cute girls. And boobies. So the creative team is on point and they have a good printer. How's the book itself? It's all kinds of fun. It's not War and Peace, it's not super deep stuff, it adheres to expectations and, like I've said before, Predicting how a story will end doesn't make the ending less enjoyable. It's still a journey, you still have to get there. The art is clean, colourful, easy to follow and consistently good. It's got a real anime edge, more to do with how the hair and faces are drawn than many of the conventions of actual manga, and the story is clean and wholesome. It's about redemption, character growth, and doing the right thing because you can. Because you can't not. It's what Heroes used to be about, and this issue is even more engaging because it's the big reveal. Culmination of 3 books worth of plot threads tied up into a huge cliffhanger that will likely leave people who didn't pick up on it at least a little shocked. This is a book that impressed me for a bunch of reasons, not just because it's a fresh neo-cyberpunk story, not only because it's got a great depth of world building and stunning, colourful art, which I think is more era influenced than anime, but what do I know, but it impressed me because it's the first time out of the gate for new creator Joe Capitano. It's rare for someone to be a talented writer as well as a talented artist. It's even rarer for a new creator's book to hit straight 10s across the board. Well drawn, tightly written, Capitano doesn't waste a lot of time with flashbacks or exposition of the world. He lays it all out implicitly and expects the reader to keep up. The book starts with a white-knuckle cyberpunk motorcycle race and ends with a huge cliffhanger that has potentially global consequences for the protagonist. People might compare this to Akira because it's Asian-influenced future city with high-performance racing bikes, or Battle Angel Alita because of the way society is built around the races, much like the fights in Alita. But Star Circuit is its own thing, and the drama of the race scene is just the setting for much bigger things that Joe is planting now for future issues. If this is the quality of books we can expect from indie creators these days, the big two are in big trouble. Yeah, I put my own book on here. What kind of creator would I be if I didn't believe that my own work is worthy to stand shoulder to shoulder with these great comics? The company men Dead, White and Blue is able to compete with every book on this top 10 list. I make no apologies for that. The Company Men features pro-level art, incredible vibrant colour, larger-than-life characters, ultra-violence, grimy subterfuge, and sharp, smart dialogue. It tells a story of a small CIA-run group of metahumans who get word of an upcoming terror attack that would escalate the tension in the war-torn region they operate in and force America to take a more active role in the conflict. The action starts on page 1 and never stops. Before the first issue is finished, the team has assassinated a world leader, fought off a military hit squad to protect a drug smuggler, crashed a plane during a lightning storm, tortured a man to death so they could interrogate his ghost, and engaged in a 12-page-long fight scene against a team of rival metahuman mercenaries. The book has received overwhelmingly positive feedback from backers to date. Book 2 is nearly halfway complete and is on track to be fully funded and delivered in 2022. It's much more difficult to choose my top 10 list this year than last year. While, as ever, it rests solely on my personal taste in comics, the quality and volume of indie comics that come out in 2021 was exponential. I can only imagine how difficult a best of 2022 list will be this time next year. Some things I thought were worth noting. Last year's list, which I've linked below, contained Kickstarter and Indiegogo books at a ratio of 7:3. Better books were being funded on the Kickstarter platform overall. I'm an Indiegogo pundit for the time being, but the better books were on Kickstarter, more as a consequence of more books being funded on Kickstarter. It was a numbers game. This year's list has a ratio of 1:4. 2 books in this list were Kickstarter, the other 8 were Indiegogo. Kickstarter's questionable ethics and business practices might have contributed to this shift, but I think there is a more direct reason for this, and it lies in another ratio. The 2020 list had 1 creator that was explicitly out-and-out Comicsgate, and 3 others who are CG by association or have been lumped in with CG by the rest of the indie comic scene because they share the values and work ethic of the CG movement. It would be unfair to say at the time of publishing that there were even 4 CG creators on the 2020 list. That'd be a stretch. This year, 9 of the 10 books listed come from CG creators. And as we all know, CG favours Indiegogo because at the time of this review, Indiegogo doesn't practice gatekeeping or censorship. There's been a significant, demonstrable shift in CG towards higher quality writing, dedicated editors, more on-time fulfillment, and higher quality control. This shift has allowed the new wave of CG to dominate the indie scene and consequently this top 10 list. As CG drifts slowly into 2 main camps, the ex-pros and the rest of us, this trend of quality writing and on-time fulfillment will only increase as new creators like myself overcome their first faltering steps and establish themselves as significant storytellers in the indie scene. In light of these trends, I would not at all be surprised if next year's list was comprised completely of CG creators. So there you have it, the top 10 indie books of 2021. Let me know in the comments below why you think I'm wrong and what book I'm a terrible person for not including. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.